Tonight, reforming the police system for a safer America.
It's about law and order, but it's about justice also, and it's about safety.
From a new White House executive order to negotiations in the Senate, the latest on how Washington lawmakers are working to change police behavior. Plus,
there are a lot of white pastors who have black people on their worship teams, but they don't have them in their leadership.
Churches across the country enter the conversation on racism in America, and how the coronavirus pandemic could lead to a spike in cancer cases. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Lawmakers take on police reform in America. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm John Jessup. Well, from the White House to the halls of the Capitol, police reform has taken center stage.
While lawmakers debated next steps over at the White House today, President Trump signed an executive order. Tonight, we have both the latest from the legislative and executive branches.
Joining us now, Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson with the bill Senate Republicans hope to pass soon. But we begin with White House correspondent Ben Kennedy. Ben, what does the president's executive order actually do?
Well, John, the executive order does address the ban on police chokeholds. President Trump said he spoke to faith leaders, members of the law enforcement community, and even the families of victims of excessive force to get their input in drafting and creating this executive order.
This is a big step.
That step motivates police agencies nationwide to adopt best practices of use of force. It also requires sharing of information about officers who engage in misconduct.
Nobody wants to get rid of them more than the overwhelming number of really good and great police officers.
The executive order on safe policing for safe communities also launches a co-responder program where health and social workers would join officers on nonviolent calls.
We will provide more resources for co-responders, such as social workers who can help officers manage these complex encounters.
In the wake of George Floyd's death, the order even addresses knee on neck and chokeholds.
Chokeholds will be banned, except if an officer's life is at risk.
Critics maintain the executive order doesn't go far enough. Reverend Al Sharpton calls it toothless, tweeting, "We don't need studies, we need police that commit crimes to be punished. All police that use chokeholds claim their lives were threatened. What's new?"
What's needed now is not more stoking of fear and division. We need to bring law enforcement and communities closer together, not to drive them apart.
Now, that executive order which President Trump signed today did stop short in addressing or banning, that is, no-knock warrants. That is one of the demands from these ongoing protests. John, Jenna?
All right, Ben Kennedy, thank you for that report. And on Capitol Hill today, lawmakers were also talking about police reform.
That's right. Senate Republicans plan to roll out their own reform bill this week, expecting a quick vote. That effort's being led by the Senate's only black Republican, Tim Scott.
Senator James Lankford is on that legislation with Scott. And earlier today, he spoke with CBN News about their proposal. For more on that, we turn to Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson. Abigail?
Well, Jenna, Senator Lankford says the GOP plan will consist of about 15 proposals ranging from increased police transparency to limiting excessive force.
We want people to be able to see what's going on in different law enforcement, and quite frankly, for the good police officers to be able to identify bad police officers that are in their midst, that are distracting from the work that's happening there, and from the good reputation of people doing law enforcement all over the country.
The bill calls for departments to report police-specific incidents to the FBI, increase police funding for body cameras, and mental health support for officers.
It's not unlikely for a police officer to deal with a domestic violence, to be able to deal with a sexual assault, to be able to deal with a person that's actually trying to steal and be able to run away from them and then go work at a school later on that day. There's a lot of emotion that's built up in that, and we want to make sure that we're helping police officers in every way that we can.
Lankford tells CBN News while common ground exists between the House and Senate bills, challenges lie ahead on compromises on chokeholds and police lawsuits in civil courts.
We're all trying to get to a result to be able to help as much as we can across the country, support law enforcement, but to be able to deal with any issues that are out there and to be able to make sure we are de-escalating and that we are finding ways to be able to say there's a better way to serve and protect that's not as violent.
As far as racial reconciliation in America goes,
the issue of race is a national issue, but it really boils down to families and individuals.
Langford encourages people to invite families of another race into their home to share a meal.
If individuals aren't developing relationships with people of other race and developing real friendships, our nation is not developing those kind of friendships. And so I challenge families to be able to develop those relationships so our nation can work on this issue together.
Both the House and Senate are going to vote on their bills by the end of this month. Before this, both sides will likely come together and put together a compromise plan. Back to you, John and Jenna.
All right, CBN's Abigail Robertson. Well, as police reform takes center stage in Washington, churches across the country have also shifted their focus, putting the spotlight on racism and how the church should fight it.
There's all kinds of diversity in our church, and if I celebrate that diversity, but never address the disparity, to me, that's hypocrisy.
Because I'm willing to step into other people's reality so that I can feel what it's like to be them. The challenge is I don't often see that coming the other way, because if there's ever empathy, then we wouldn't see this lack of humanity.
Today, the Barna Group released a new survey on the church and racism. It finds 94% of pastors believe the congregations have a responsibility to publicly denounce racial discrimination. 76% of church leaders say the church should support peaceful protests, and about 62% of churches have already made a public statement about the recent protests. Well, joining us now is Brooke Hemphill, the vice president of the Barna Group, out with today's new survey. Brooke, great to have you here today. Let's start off with this. What's the biggest takeaway you learned from this latest poll, and how is it different from past polling?
Yeah, so those stats that you just gave are really shocking to us. The church has, as you heard from the comments before, been called out for not speaking up very specifically about racial injustice. So we'll often see churches pursuing programs of unity and diversity, but not actually addressing specific issues that are happening in our civic society. And so we're seeing a shift in this latest poll that pastors are speaking up from the pulpit, making very public statements saying that we do have race issues we need to deal with, and speaking out against what has happened in terms of injustices, whether that was George Floyd or other recent deaths, that they're saying Christians need to stand up and engage in this topic more intentionally.
Yeah. Brooke, that statistic, 94% of pastors believe the church has a responsibility to denounce racial discrimination. How are they going about doing that?
Yeah, right now it's mostly just speaking up, and actually many are taking a posture of listening, which is great. The next thing they're going to need to be doing is teaching. So you asked how this has changed over time. 2 years ago, we asked some pastors to tell us about how they taught and whether or not they taught much on the topic of justice. And at that point, only 6 out of 10 said that they even talked about the topic of justice, much less racial justice, from the pulpit. And so now you've got the vast majority saying, actually, we do need to engage in this conversation. We need to talk about this very intentionally. So I think you're going to see these pastors beginning to unpack that and really to help wrestle through. So this is what I need to believe and what I need to understand. And so how does that affect my actions? And for example, in supporting protests or other civic actions that could make a difference in actually law.
Brooke, while it is encouraging and great to see the numbers rise in supporting racial reconciliation and addressing these issues, for the 6% who didn't agree that the church has a responsibility, were you able to dig in and find out why, whether they don't see the problem or perhaps they feel like it's not the church's place, or maybe they fear action could upset certain members?
Yeah, it would be all of those above. And we've studied this in some research over the past 2 years where we've been digging into church dynamics. So some are concerned about upsetting members of their congregation who maybe they're not sure how they're going to take it. Others are concerned that it might feel like they're wading into politics inappropriately. And then some are just not sure how to handle it. And so they're feeling a little bit uneducated or maybe just unfamiliar with how to even talk about some of these topics. So those are some of the things that hold people back. But honestly, there's been so many who've gotten past those barriers in these last couple of weeks and said, you know what, I might not know the right thing to say, but we have to talk about this and I have to be honest about that. And it's better to engage in conversation than to just turn our face the other way. So we are definitely seeing that is a shift. We also have seen over the years that these things kind of rise and fall. So I'm hoping that's not the case this time, that this conversation will continue, but it wouldn't be uncommon for people to kind of subside after a while. So we really are just encouraging pastors to continue to step into that conversation, even if they don't feel like they know all the answers, but to just acknowledge what is happening and to acknowledge injustice. And then what is your role as a Christian to respond to injustice?
Just a few seconds left here, Brooke, but what's your sense? Do you think this could actually make the church stronger?
I do. I think there are many young people and many people of color who are feeling unwelcome in churches, and this is one of the reasons why. They want their faith to really integrate with every part of their life and to be meaningful. They want their lives to reflect that faith. And so they want to see the church rise up and speak out for others. And I think that that's going to be a very positive effect for many of them.
All right, Brooke Hemphill, Vice President of the Varner Group, we appreciate you being with us on the day that you released your new survey. Thanks.
Thanks, Brooke. Well, to the economy. Today, Fed Chair Jerome Powell testified before Senate lawmakers and addressed the current downturn.
It's helpful to think of it in sort of three stages. The first stage was the shutdown. The second part will be the bounce back. And you should see during that period the economy opening, stores opening, all kinds of different economic entities opening, and people going back to work. Then we think, and I think most, if not all, forecasters think, that will leave us well short of where we were in February. Full employment with the economy really working broadly across all of its areas. And the reason for that is just that there are parts of the economy that will struggle to return to their old ways of activity because they involve getting people together closely in large groups. And so it's going to take some time to rebuild confidence. Right now, we seem to be in the beginning. We may be in the beginning of that second stage.
And Powell testified there's no way to tell just how long the economic downturn will last or how quick recovery may come. He did say, though, the Fed will do everything it can to help lessen the blow. Meanwhile, some good news tonight on the retail front. Newly released May numbers show an increase in retail spending. Sales jumped 17.7% from April to May. The bounce back coming as more businesses begin to reopen. And although an increase in sales is good news during the pandemic, that number is down more than 6% compared to this time last year.
Turkey goes on the attack in Iraq. When we come back, the latest on new airstrikes in the region and the potential fallout.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Well, welcome back. Dramatic action highlighting rising tensions on the Korean peninsula. North Korea blew up a liaison office building just north of the heavily armed border with the South today. It was a theatrical display of power, though the demolition was largely symbolic. No South Koreans were working there at the time. It does, however, make it more difficult for South Korea to continue normal relations with Pyongyang.
To the Middle East and Operation Claw Eagle. That is the code name Turkey used for airstrikes over northern Iraq this week against suspected Kurdish rebels with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, known as PKK. It is considered a terrorist group by both Turkey and the United States.
Jennifer Wishon explains how this latest move has further terrorized religious minorities in the region.
Yazidis who live in northern Iraq were nearly wiped out by ISIS 6 years ago, and now fear returning to their homes in and around Sinjar because of aggressions by Turkey and others. U.S. Commissioner for International Religious Freedom, Nadine Mayenza, is here to help us understand some of the dynamics in the region. Thank you, Nadine. First, tell us what happened on Sunday.
Sure. On Sunday evening, Turkey commenced airstrikes on Sinjar in Iraq, and they did what they called Operation Claw Eagle. They named it, with over 81 airstrikes in this area of Sinjar, which is where the homeland for the Yazidi people, where they were victims of genocide in 2014. And in the same week these attacks happened, Yazidis were just starting to come back. They had about 200 families which had returned just a few days before these attacks. So it was very troubling to us as well as many others around the world.
It sounds like the timing there is suspect. Why does this latest move by Turkey matter so much?
Well, Turkey has been in a feud with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or the PKK, for quite a long time, and they consider them terrorists, and they are accusing them of planning attacks, or at least that's what they're saying from Sinjar. There's no proof that has been the case. There is the PKK present there, but these attacks to do 81 strikes in an area that is so poor, so desperate, with so few Yazidis having returned, and the ones that did return had to experience literally watching the Mount Sinjar on fire, was really troubling and really disturbing to them. We were told by I was told by Murad Ismail, a Yazidi leader, that about 700 families were living in a camp on Mount Sinjar, just 2 kilometers away from some of the strikes. And so putting their lives in danger, traumatizing them again. And it seemed as if they weren't trying to hit the targets, as they were trying to make a statement and to scare. Was it to keep the Yazidis from coming, or was it to make a point that they consider the PKK to be dangerous and they're worthy of these kind of strikes, even though it did not seem to match the facts on the ground? And it seems that we've seen this with President Erdogan from Turkey before, where when there's domestic problems at home, that you'll see him doing international efforts to draw attention away from that. We know a lot of us remember when he arrested Pastor Andrew Brunson, the American pastor of a small church, and accused him of being a spy.
Well, give us a sense of the current status of the Yazidi people. I mean, you mentioned that only a few families have gone back, that some were just starting to go back this week. You pointed out that 6 years ago they were nearly wiped out by the Islamic State. What is their status right now?
Over 400,000 are still in camps in the Kurdistan region of northern Iraq, in Dohuk, and then some of them have also been able to immigrate away to other countries. And so there's been construction just starting to happen. There really is a need for self-governance in Iraq, for them to be able to build their own security forces and to build their own, have their own mayor, have their own governance, as the Christians also need, those Christian areas need the same thing. That would really help, I think, for long-term for them to be able to have a community. ISIS went after them really the most and kidnapped over 6,000 of the women into sex slavery. 3,000 are still missing.
I know you have been tweeting about this. What is the Commission's take on Turkey's actions?
That Turkey should not be going after religious minorities either in Iraq or in Syria, and that when they do, we're going to call them out.
Commissioner Mayenza, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, ladies. Well, warnings of a tie between cancer deaths and the COVID-19 pandemic. The details when Faith Nation returns.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
And welcome back. Well, some potentially good news in the fight against coronavirus. Researchers in the UK have found a commonly used steroid that may increase survival for those who test positive.
We've been able to develop the science that shows that dexamethasone reduces mortality by between 1/6 and 1/3. This is a huge step forward.
And the preliminary research shows a survival increase for the seriously sick, like those on ventilators or using oxygen. Research will continue into the drug's effectiveness, but so far results don't show much help for those with more mild cases of the disease.
Well, Jenna, since the lockdowns went into effect in mid-March, millions of us have been staying home to avoid catching the virus, but could that harm other aspects of your health?
Yeah, some experts worry government stay-at-home orders and self-imposed restrictions may cause more people to die of cancer. Lori Johnson explains why.
New data shows a staggering 90% of cancer screenings were canceled this year because of COVID-19 stay-at-home orders. Hundreds of thousands of Americans missed the tests that can detect cancers of the colon, breast, cervix, and more, often before the patient even has any symptoms.
Over time, cancer grows and can spread throughout the body. That's why early detection and treatment improves the patient's chance of survival. Missed or delayed screenings could prove catastrophic.
That ends up delaying their opportunity, if they are going to be diagnosed with cancer, to have the benefits of that early detection. And so my sense is that there will be more severe cancer diagnoses.
Now that many COVID restrictions are easing and patients can get the screenings and other checkups, ongoing fear is a problem. Some worry about catching the virus at the doctor's office or hospital, although healthcare facilities take steps to minimize that risk by requiring masks, clean hands, fewer people in waiting rooms, and more.
I would love to be able to see churches really stepping up to the plate, encouraging people to be able to go and get their regular cancer screening done.
We needed to be able to have folks that were walking with them through this.
Karen Tripp leads a nationwide ministry of church volunteers trained to help cancer patients draw closer to Christ. She expects a spike in the months to come.
There's going to be a lot of people that we know in our communities that are going to be coping with cancer that are going to need to see how Christ can help them through that. When we look at the studies, there's no question that the impact of faith on a person's physical health is enormous.
Turns out it's not just cancer screenings. A new survey shows nearly half of all Americans report they or a family member skipped or delayed other medical and dental care because of the pandemic. And as a result, 1 in 10 of them say that person's condition worsened. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Finally tonight, since the pandemic broke out, essential workers like New York City bus driver Mia House have been on the front line serving others. That is until Mia came down with the virus herself.
Yeah, now recovered though and feeling healthy, she's getting back behind the wheel. Mia's focus not on herself, but on the community she serves.
I was one of those who thought, not me, I take care of myself, I'm okay, I'm fine. But lo and behold, I caught the virus. Being back to work shows my resiliency. Nothing is going to stop me from being who I am, who I need to be, helping the community.
And it took Mia weeks to recover from the virus, but good to see that determination.
Absolutely, a hero indeed. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great night.